This is TPG Live, and I'm Jeremy Horn, also known as the Product Guy, and we're about to begin. This is your stage, no matter where you are in your product journey, from startups to Fortune 500s, interns to CEOs. We're a global community that values every voice. TPG Live is a show where everyone, both on and off camera, is encouraged to join in and shape the conversation with your insights, your questions, and your topics. Just hop into the chat room and I will strive to include as many of your comments as possible within the broader discussion in real time. Today, the on-camera portion of our roundtable is joined by Tovit Neiser, a business storyteller and owner of a boutique consulting firm that helps B2B companies and executives communicate their value more effectively inside and out. Tovit brings 15 years of blending business development and marketing experience to the table. A former journalist, she's founded 2 startups and managed marketing and biz dev for a hardware startup that was later acquired. She's also a published novelist and experiments with stand-up comedy, adding an extra edge to her storytelling expertise. We're also joined by Dan Mason. With 25 years of digital product experience, Dan has done it all, from software engineering and product management to executive leadership and consulting. Currently, he's principal and head of AI at Stride, a custom software consultancy. Dan's career includes stints at Disney, ESPN, Viacom, Shutterstock, People Magazine, NBCU, and countless startups. His expertise, 0 to 1 product builds, product discovery, media, advertising, and the future of work. He's also a New Jersey suburban dad to 3 teenagers and a devoted, long-suffering Washington, D.C. sports fan. Also joining us, Isabella Korkarava, a product leader shaping the future at Fortune 500 companies like Sky, a Comcast company. Isabella has expertise in global product design and launches, bringing innovative products to millions worldwide. Her achievements, Sky Glass and Sky Q over IP, groundbreaking platforms that drove tens of millions in revenue and up CSAT scores across the EU. An advocate for equitable, accessible, and impactful products, she also mentors rising product leaders and advises startups. She holds an MBA from City University of London's Bayes Business School. And finally, Zain Yosef. With nearly 20 years of product and tech expertise, Zain is the founder of Paman, a product studio focused on building products, skills, and human connection. Previously, he's worked with BCG, Digital Ventures, Verizon, and funded startups. When he's not solving big problems, he's cheering for the New York Giants, sampling the best ice cream, or hanging out with his dog. Today on TPG Live, we'll be discussing the product management shift from the future of product execution to rethinking the roles and structures of product management for 2025 and beyond. Ask yourself, what new skill will be most important for PMs in the coming year? And what changes will product leaders need for teams and processes to meet tomorrow's product realities today? Join us in the chat room and at the roundtable as we discuss all this and much more coming up next on TPG Live. Your go-to platform for all things product management, connecting you with industry leaders, trendsetters, and a global community of insights and unique perspectives. This is the Product Way. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of TPG Live. We've got an extra large roundtable for you today. We're going to be talking about a lot of great topics, looking at the future of product management and beyond. Before we get started, though, let me just go around. Tovit, Zain, Isabella, Dan, anything to correct about what I said about you? Anything in the opening? Anything you want to add, etc.?
No, that was great.
All right. Wow. I like that. So, as I always do, we're going to start with a question of the show. And today's question of the show is: if you could give a TED Talk on any topic related to product management, what would it be about? So we'll go around the room. I'll go in the order that I see people on my screen. So I'll start with you, Zain.
Great. Good to be with you, Jeremy, and nice to meet everyone here too. I think my TED Talk would be focused on how to build a self-driving product. So I think an interesting, theme around the future of product and where things are going as we automate more work, as we automate more of the actual day-to-day work of product. I think an interesting theme to explore with is how do you actually build something that's self-running? I think there may be a future in which we head towards a world where products can actually run themselves with some level of human intervention. So that would be an interesting TED Talk for me.
Tove?
Right. So you touched on that point, and we're going to talk about it today, which is the skills and skill sets that are needed. So I call my TED Talk, I am a PM. I am a PM. And it's going to introduce Michael, who's a professional, devoted PM who's bombarded with demands from his multiple clients and audiences. And just before drowning, all these requests and everyone's fighting over his time, he decides to stop and position himself from I am to PM, creating a strong story, personal brand, professional identity, all these skills that I think are really, really needed in this profession.
Awesome. Dan?
It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I think I would talk about how, at least in my experience, a lot of product is countercultural to what's going on inside most companies, right? We talk about building product culture. I believe in that. I think building culture where you think about product and customers the right way is important. And at the same time, you have layers and layers of management and other people in the company who are used to the idea that it's just about the dollars and cents, that if you just work harder, you'll get more done. And product is a lot more like art and creativity, I think, than it is like that. And so the notion of how to figure out, how to blend, kind of the good parts of hustle culture and the good parts of the creative product culture and kind of make the whole thing sing.
Great. Isabella?
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you for inviting me here today. And it's a pleasure to be here alongside everyone else. So if I were to give a TED Talk, then my topic or the title would be something along the lines, the mastery of building global products. And just to cue people on this one, I would like you to imagine being in a car, taking a long road trip, and no matter which seat you're in, you experience the ride with equitable levels of safety, comfort, sense of direction, and enjoyment. The reality is that majority of the products are not actually built for all users. We're not considering all the needs. There is a reason why, but equally, there are many reasons why we should be doing it. So, because I envision a future where companies would create more equitable, valuable, and accessible products that empower everyone, this is exactly the topic that I would like to focus on.
Great. I went with, I think I was a little bit inspired by the news that I want to just stop watching. And so I kind of went with a title of Let's Make It Better, Solving Problems That Matter. Would be my TED Talk. And basically, if you think about it, every great solution starts with finding the real problem. And that's what we do as product people, not just the obvious problem. It's a mindset that's not just for product managers. It's a mindset that everyone could adopt. And this mindset, it being a product mindset, it doesn't have to be limited to products. It can be applied across society. And right now, like I said, it just feels so much more relevant than ever. So when you're facing a challenge, it's worth asking, what's the real problem there? Then take a step forward, act, see where it leads, iterate. And that's how progress happens. And so that would be kind of the foundation of my TED Talk. And so before we get started with everything else, I do want to mention to folks, before we get started, a quick reminder, you can support The Product Way, TPG Live on Patreon. We just launched it and enjoy some really great perks. For just $5 a month, you can enjoy every episode of The Product Way channel without interruption, completely ad-free, along with full, unreleased, over 50 episodes of our tips and tricks for product managers. And these are great tips and tricks at all levels in our How I PM collection. And we have got a lot of different collections. I just thought I'd mention that one. If you're looking for even more, we have higher tiers to unlock exclusive benefits like one-on-one mentoring, shout-outs, priority access, and really a lot more. So please join us at patreon.com/theproductway to support the show and keep this type of content that you love coming your way. So thank you, everybody. So with that said, let's just kind of dive into it. Our first topic, it's all about, we're looking at automation, we're looking at workflow transformation, we're looking at how the execution of product management and everything, all the systems and processes around it, how we see them changing and evolving over time. And so the first question I really want to just put out there to the team, we'll start kind of broad, and then we'll find some areas of focus. And also for the people who are joining us in our, as I call it, the off-camera part of the roundtable, people in the chat room, please feel free to ask questions, make comments, and we'll work, and I'll work to get those questions, comments to the roundtable on camera in an orderly fashion throughout. So for the first question is, how is automation changing how your team prioritizes and manages backlogs or other parts of the product? Zane, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think my perspective will come from more of the early stage, smaller team startups. That's more where I'm working now. And I think where I see things going is a lot of the day-to-day execution work of product is the pieces that are starting to be automated more. So if you're thinking about backlog management, I think we're starting with simple things like, okay, maybe I don't have to write all of the user stories myself today, right? Like I'm using AI as a thought partner to write user stories. I'm using AI as a thought partner to manage the tickets. I think where we're headed is starting from those individual pieces of AI as a thought partner to more and more workflow automation, where maybe I don't have to do all of the backlog management myself. Now maybe some of these things can happen more automatically, where certain triggers then drive us to, automatic prioritization of the backlog, which then drives automatic communication to the engineering team. So for me, I think that's more where it's happening. It's stringing together, like just going from a thought partner to actually workflow automation.
Gotcha. Tove?
Unmuted. Thank you. So I think that the place of PM now, when everything is more automated and work is seamless, is to be the person who communicates with the humans that are left. Let's say so many is outsourced to AI.
The remaining humans. Gotcha.
Yeah. Do we have anyone else who's IM PM? So communicating and kind of helping oiling that system and seeing that there are no frictions between the people who are still, the R&D or the marketing, but coming up with the communication skills. If it's less, Zane said that we're outsourcing the user stories to the AI. So what is that creative place that's left for the product manager? That's where I think it is.
Yeah, Dan, what tools are you seeing? What tools are you using? What tools do you think will help improve collaboration and decision making the most? And feel free to put on your fortune telling hat too if you see some tools that should be coming.
Oh, for sure.
That don't exist.
Well, honestly, the hard part for me with this is that my job as a day job really isn't product management anymore. I'm basically a workflow automation guy. I am spending all of my time, I think, figuring out how to take the next step in what Zane was talking about, which is you have a backlog, and it's possible that you could refine it better or prioritize it better using AI and using the data that you can synthesize with it. But we're going to the point of maybe I should just look at everything that's in ready for dev state, and I should just go and write all the tests for it using AI so that I don't have to bother the developers with it. Depends on your team, right? Some developers like writing the tests, some developers can't be bothered. But like the idea of improving your throughput by pretty heavily automating some of these things that used to be real choke points in process, right? Like, I think we are maybe a little bit more aggressive about this than the world at large. And it's not going to work for everybody for various reasons. But, you are at the point where you can go from idea to real thing both very quickly and without specialized skills. Like I used to be an engineer. I was an engineer for 7 years out of college. Like I can write code. I didn't do it for 15 years until AI showed back up, because now it's easy enough for me to do it. And because I know how to do it, I can orchestrate it at relatively sort of high levels. So I really do think all that stuff's going to change. Now, the question is this really the PM job? That's the debate to have, right? Like, am I doing
Isn't that always the question?
Exactly. And so that idea of like, everybody's version of the PM job is a little different. the ones that are closest to the business, decisions are still going to be challenging to make, right? There's still going to be a lot of work to do to get stakeholders lined up with whatever you can do, no matter how fast you can do it or how it works. But the closer you get to the build, the more I think it does kind of collapse some of the roles of product manager, engineer, QA engineer, like all of those things kind of can get a lot closer together. So I think, frankly, I think the role is going to change substantially enough that we will ultimately have to rename it. That's my basic precept.
So, especially since you're so much you were involved so much in redesigning workflows, what tools are you seeing being used? What tools do you think should be created? So I want to hear from you, and then I'll go over to Isabella afterwards.
Yeah, so I mean, I would recommend two things that are, I mean, not hopefully too specific to my kind of area, but look into LangGraph from LangChain. LangGraph is basically a way to design state machines with AI agent personalities as nodes in the graph. So you can pass them around, they all share a context, they can have tools. That's what I'm using to orchestrate a lot of my stuff, and the basic code underneath it is Python. So it's not super hard to get your head around. And then the second tool, if you're going to work with those things, is called Klein. If people have not looked at Klein yet, you may have seen buzz about Cursor. Windsurf is the new hot one, like IDEs that are AI infused. Klein is just my favorite. It's the one that I think works the best. And it is literally at the point where you describe what you want to do. You're in VS Code. The code is there. It'll just do the changes for you. And largely speaking, it gets them right. It helps to be able to code. It helps to be able to know what's going on. But I have done fancy stuff that I honestly could not have done myself with this tool. That was usually the domain of a professional engineer. So like that is now attainable for people like us.
Yeah, if you can send me links to some of those tools, we can also include them in the description after the show for people to go check them out as well. Yeah. Isabella, what tools are you using? And this also comes from I guess it comes from the person named Handouts with K Moore Group. Interestingly named. But what tools are you using?
So first of all, I wouldn't like to recommend any specific tools on behalf of the organization, right? So, and generally, I would like to point out that I'm representing today my personal thoughts. So that's the first thing. Now, when it comes to AI-powered tools, the way that I would like to answer this question is where I would see, let's say, these tools powering or empowering the product teams. And I truly believe that, for instance, if we were to use more AI-powered tools in the areas of discovery, whether that is for market research and competitive analysis, where we just need to translate the insights and choose what actually works best, or if we were to use AI-powered product design and prototyping tools, then immediately we have lowered, let's say, the effort of the team. We actually managed to increase our speed or velocity depending on the quality of the output. And immediately we have, we're able to become from the bottleneck team to the team that actually speeds up and empowers everyone else. That being said, I would expect that customer feedback and survey tools would be extremely relevant to our function, and not to mention that anything AI powered for data analysis and insights are critical for our, let's say, product lifecycle.
Yeah, Zain, I'm going to go to you for this next one. And this comes from Ravi Katyal. And so Ravi's asking, AI can definitely be used for automation of day-to-day product development. However, how much AI will be utilized in product and engineering design and bridging the gap?
So I go back to a little bit of what Dan was saying earlier. I think there's AI being incorporated into every piece of the process. So when you go from idea to design to code generation, which includes product and engineering, all the way through to deployment, there are AI tools that are coming at every stage of the process. I think there is a if you're, if you're just trying to hack together something that's scrappy, a prototype that you're just doing for yourself, that's one level of quality. But when you're talking about production grade applications, I think there still is this like last mile problem, which is like, is this truly good enough? Is this something I could trust to be something that I would deploy in my real application, or where you have a lot of users at scale? So I think there's going to be AI across everything, but for the near future, at least, there's still that human in the loop piece, where you need either a human engineer or a human DevOps person who's reviewing and approving and making sure that there's a certain quality bar that's met.
Yeah. One thing actually that we've used as a kind of a nice analogy is, and like a couple of my partners at Stride actually are basically factory automation folks, right? So, coming from the world of factories, what you do is you design the system to run at scale, right? You know what it's going to look like. And then you run, 10 things off the line, you check those by hand, you look at every stitch, you figure out everything that's going on, and then you run 100. And if those 100 look okay, then you run 10,000. And I think it's going to be the same kind of model here. There are going to be some things that we can get to comfort with, on these systems. And, again, I mentioned tests. That's a place where we actually are pretty focused, because you can tailor these systems to write pretty good, pretty repeatable tests across a code base. It's not the same as interpreting the intent of what was coming through the backlog. It's not the same as approving designs. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are much harder to do, entirely with AI. But there are some things where, if you treat them like these sort of highly automatable, robotic processes, there's a playbook for that. Like, we don't know what it is in software because we're basically medieval artisans, but we're going to have to learn how to work more like the factory guys.
So Dan, how do you see product workflows transforming into 2025 and beyond, as far out as you can see?
Well, so I think that, again, this is going to be really, really dependent on the organization and their comfort. And I think Zane's exactly right to point that out. People are not going to do this unless they are positive it's safe and, fundamentally that it fits with their culture. If their culture is such where, they want humans involved in all these places and don't want to give that up, that's their right, right? And I really do hope some teams retain a lot of those things. But I do think that you're going to get to the point where, and I forget who said this, but computer science and, like the art of coding is going to be a lot more like electrical engineering. You have a handful of very, very smart, specialized people who still do it, right? You still have electrical engineers, that's their profession. But they're largely overseeing systems that, sort of do the larger work themselves. They're either, in the factories with the printed circuit boards, overseeing that, make sure everything's okay. We will still need people like that in computer science. What we're not going to need is the tonnage of all of the people to go through this process in the sort of very handcrafted way that we have. And again, that's down the stack. Up the stack, companies are still going to be awful at making decisions. You're still going to have politics. You're still going to have the highest paid person's opinion in the room, right? That, I think, is going to become more important. So, I see there being a fork.
Didn't Harvard Review say that you could replace that CEOs agreed they could be replaced by AI?
Right. And I look forward to seeing those CEOs actually pull that trigger, whereas they will pull the trigger down the stack. Right. So I think you're going to see a lot of change at, sort of, if the middle portion is kind of the connection between the business and the technical and delivery teams. Down the stack, I think you're going to see a lot more cross-functional builders that will still maybe call themselves product people, but are going to be able to write some code. Maybe it's just prototypes, but those prototypes are going to be really close to what the end code is actually going to look like. There's going to be a lot more blending of roles. And then up the stack, if you can build faster, I think you're going to see a lot more people, doing the current product function just at higher scale. Like, you'll be able to make more decisions, run more experiments. If people can get good at that, I think that's a real opportunity. But again, companies right now are just awful at it, right? Like, we're built around the idea that it takes a long time to write code. So the processes that we have for product people and designers and PMOs are all built around that being the scarce resource. It's hard to write good code, so we have to really, really think hard about it before we pull any triggers to put our developers on anything. I think a lot of that stuff is going to invert. I think you'll have more people upstream ideating and doing interesting stuff as soon as we can figure out how to do the build right.
Yeah, you mentioned some interesting things about the changing of the roles, the blending of the roles. That I think, but I want to kind of put a pin in that, because I want to come back to that in one of our other topics. But I just want to call that out as I think a theme that we're going to see throughout this conversation. Tove, what parts of the product lifecycle do you think need the most transformation?
I don't know if I'm keeping this quote for later, but Dan, you said something about more people in ideation, and you probably know that tweet that went quite viral with the Polish author, Joanna Maciejewska, something like that. And she said, we're getting everything wrong with the order of AI. I wanted to do my laundry and dishes so I can do ideation and creation.
Yes,
And
sure.
that would be amazing. That's just as a creative person who wants to do that. But you're asking about the shift. I totally agree with what you guys said before, that we'll need more focus on the creativity and get that more enhanced, because everything else is just a press of a button. And hopefully the paychecks for these creative ideas and creative people will go up and be on a pedestal, because writing a code and just shipping something, iterating and trying is very fast, and it's getting, just in a second. But coming up with these ideas and understanding who's the audience and really meeting them and discussing what they really need and solving their problems, that's a challenge for now. Don't know what's coming around the corner in 2025 and the rise of the machines. But yeah.
So Isabella, same question to you. What parts of the product lifecycle do you think need the most transformation?
I was just about to volunteer. So, in all honesty, pre-launch, I can actually see the discovery process being benefited massively from the use of these tools. It is a time-consuming process, and if it is not conducted in a strategic, methodical, structured way, then it can also be a waste of time for most PLs, product leads, regardless of their level. The second, let's say, part of the life cycle would be the design and the definition part. And the design, you can all agree that it is a very repetitive and time-consuming process. So I would love to have a tool that could offer me real-time design options, even if the options are not, up to the standard, but it would be sufficient for us to define the directionality. And equally, I'm just looking forward for the time that we would be able to capture the requirements, the themes, the epics, the stories, with the same format, same consistency, quality, and acceptance criteria. And I'm sure that there must be some, at least early proof of concept around this one, and development. I mean, if I have the opportunity to use a no-code or low-code tool to create those proof of concepts and MVPs, that would be fantastic, because I would be able then to pitch my ideas and get decisions faster, and obviously access the market faster. Post-launch, anything that any predictive analytics tools, that would be brilliant. This is where I see being massively benefited by those AI-powered tools.
Yeah. So Zane, Isabella touched on a few key points of the drivers for, I think, what we see as needing to change in workflow and product execution. What are you seeing as the big driving forces that driving the next big shifts in workflow transformation?
I think there's a lot of stuff that we have become accustomed to doing that is kind of commodity, right? Like a lot of engineers know this too. There's a lot of copy paste that happens, right? Like when you're coding, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in our processes that are basically things that have been done before. There's lots of information already out there, and you're just duplicating the effort. And so I think those are the first places that now we're starting to see get automated. So when AI is generating code, as an example, a lot of the boilerplate type code, it can do a pretty good job with, and it can generate that right away. And so I think, those are the things that, in terms of drivers, that's like the first area. It's just things that are repeatable. They're relatively boilerplate. It's things we do over and over again. even like the AI note takers, things like that. It's just processing information, converting it to text. That kind of stuff is going to get automated faster. The other things like strategic thinking, creative ideation, critical sort of problem solving, stakeholder management, those things are harder because they're much more bespoke. So that will, I think, be
how much harder are they, though? I want to play devil's advocate on that. A lot of people say, oh, they're trying to be creative. Most people are not coming up with creative solutions. They're just rehashing what is already out there, or they're just slightly iterating on what already exists. So how much creativity is really needed?
But that's my point, though, right? So like if you're a designer and you're just copying and pasting a bunch of designs or a UI kit out of what already exists.
And Google, they said 25% of their code's written by AI now.
Exactly. So a lot of that, I think, is going to become commodity. So then that puts even more of a premium on differentiated design. So when we're talking about there's going to be a lot more ideas out there, that also means there's going to be a lot more noise. And so what's going to stand out through the noise? That's where, like, if you have a truly talented designer, you have a PM who's willing to go and do something different and not just do the stock, whatever the stock product is, those things will stand out more. So that will be an advantage.
Yeah, if I can pile onto that for a second, like I think the real question with all of this is not just about the PM role, it's about the team, right? What team do you need to actually execute on these new kinds of projects, right? Which maybe could be done faster with less cycles, with maybe a different level of oversight. Like I was sort of just throwing out there to try to sort of provoke a conversation internally. I was like, look, I think on a team of 10 people, you probably only need 5 people to do the same thing tomorrow, but it's a different 5 people. It's like 5 people with different skills doing different things, playing different roles, right? You don't need as many people banging out code. I think that's starting to become a granted, but you do need other things, and you need people who are savvy across, some lines that used to be kind of hard, right? There were hard handoffs between user stories and technical tasks, and people raising their fingers in sprint and scrum planning meetings, right, to do story points. A lot of that stuff either doesn't exist tomorrow or exists differently. And we just have to acknowledge that, like, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but like that is the shift to prepare for. I also want to throw out one provocative example just to sort of give people a sense, if you haven't played with this, of like what is actually possible right now. So I was doing an experimental thing with Klein, and specifically what I wanted it to do, because we're looking at a modernization project for a giant 25-year-old backend. And what we were trying to figure out was, if I just gave this thing access to the front end, could it basically rebuild it on a modern stack? I'm not going to worry about the back end yet. That's a whole other ball of wax. But can I literally just give this thing access and have it rebuild it, by looking at it? And it can. Like, Claude has the ability to do computer use now, right? Which basically means if I run this thing locally on my laptop, or I give it a URL and it can hit it, it can go page by page and rebuild this stuff. And it got it almost exactly right. This was not a hard design. This was not like something that needed to be pixel perfect, but it nailed it. And like, we have to accept that, like, those kinds of jobs where you really are just either reproducing things that are like internal admin consoles, or like, the details don't matter that much, it just has to work. There is going to be a world of opportunity to just redo those things, right? Instead of living with them and sort of over processing the process of building them.
I want to go to Isabella for this one. How do you see the discovery part of the process evolving in the next few years?
So, becoming much faster, getting to the point much faster. I anticipate that with the use of those AI-powered tools, we should be able, for instance, to 10 plus our velocity, high quality at high speed. Equally, I do expect that we won't have to involve many different teams. We might, or many different, let's say, product manager levels. At the moment, you see that you would notice, like, majority of the hierarchy being involved in order, let's say, to review the output of a discovery piece. I'm not quite sure, though, if I'm covering or if I'm answering the question that you were aiming for, though.
That's all progress is good progress, right? So um, I guess what I want to also get into is we're talking about the cost dropping. We're talking about being able to create products at scale, or as Dan pointed out, just computer go make that. As the costs are dropping through no code, low code, AI, how do you see product teams shifting their focus to prioritize? Is the shift in focus? Let me rephrase it. Is the shift in focus going to be more on discovery and distribution, or is the focus the focus priority going to be elsewhere?
That's a good question. So what we would have to think is effectively, if you take a look at the product life cycle from discovery to development and launch, then the question is where you would find more manual, repeated kind of tasks, right? The truth of the matter is at the design stage, you would have more manual labor and repeated tasks. Therefore, discovery, which is a more of a creative part of the product life cycle, if it makes sense, and distribution allows more space for creativity and more space for strategic thinking. What I wanted to add earlier on is, even if you had three different, let's say, professionals with the exact same idea and the exact same kind of, design fed by generative AI. The truth of the matter is that at the point of the implementation, all three of them would actually deliver a different product. The question is, depending on their level of creativity, the level of their experience, how they would differentiate. So I think this is actually an opportunity to be creative around the areas of discovery and distribution, and create some competitive edge.
Zane, I want to go to you. Basically the same question. As costs drop, as automation accelerates, where do you see product teams shifting their focus? Is it discovery and distribution? Do you see it elsewhere?
I think one thing I think is distribution, that piece is going to be key, because there's going to be, as we've established before, right? There's going to be more, it's going to become easier and easier to produce things and generate new ideas and put some things out there. So what that's going to mean is there's a supply of ideas, and the supply of things is going to increase. But the thing that's going to stay the same is the number of hours in the day. So we only have 24 hours, and maybe even 12 hours if you're going to sleep or not sleep, but you have 12 hours to consume stuff. So the demand is staying the same, and the supply of ideas is increasing. So by definition, what that means is the cost of distribution is then going to go up, right? So to get your idea and get somebody's attention becomes even harder. So I think two things are going to happen. There's going to be even more personalized niche ideas. So a lot of these, like today, there might be, products that cover a broad set of users. Now there may be more solutions that are even more tailored to individuals. And then the second thing is, for certain things, if you're building something that's truly mass market, it's going to be much more expensive to get people's attention. So we're already seeing that. Like, a lot of growth roles are seeing a lot of popularity, even when other product roles are coming down. Like, growth and marketing is still amongst some of the most popular roles that companies are hiring for. So I think that's going to continue.
Dan, how do you see AI shaping ideation and creativity in product development?
Well, I mean, just to build on, I think, a couple of things that both Isabella and Zane said. So, like, the idea that you either are going to have to sort of focus the ideation on things that you can actually deploy and distribute and test, right? Like, one of the things I think is going to be weird is if you can build really fast, but you don't have any user volume, you may have all these ideas sitting on the shelf and you honestly don't know which ones are going to work. You don't have a good way to go out and get the market validation. Whereas if you built slower, you can sort of get the rest of your organization to rally around, getting actual data on, sort of one concept, not 10. And for that matter, if you can build 10 things and 9 of them would literally murder your business because they're bad ideas, if you can build them really fast, I think there's so much pent up kind of demand for building things, especially inside, these big companies that are used to going really slow. You're going to see mistakes. You're going to see people building things because they can, and then ending up paying, a heavy price. So like, and that idea just of multiple people, given the same idea would come up with different solutions. I think we need to find a process for allowing that to happen in a way that, can be tested and, sort of put through, appropriate processes. Like the way I think about it now is, you could do something a lot more like, the Mad Men stuff where, you have 10 like boards lied around a conference room, and Don Draper picks the 2 that he likes. Like, I think we're going to have a lot more choices, and you're going to have to come up with some curation process so that you don't just do everything, because that would be bad.
We could get AI to do that.
Well, you could. I mean, but I actually do think, though, that like good taste is going to be one of the big differentiators. Like, people with good product taste are going to be worth their weight in gold, but it's going to be hard to find them, and it's going to be hard to train them to work this way. Like you hear examples of like, Evan Spiegel at Snap is just supposed to be like this awesome product thinker who's like, turned Snap and Snapchat into this thing that, like nobody else could see. It's like, okay, that's a unicorn example. Like, how do you do this in a normal company with, normal teams and normal products? Like, how do you have the appropriate level of good taste inside these orgs that are kind of just built to, build things one at a time, whatever they can get away with?
Oh, we can call that role influencer.
Well, again, there are answers. I'm not sure I like any of them, but there are answers. Correct.
Well, then I'll move on. So if workflows are fully or mostly automated, how do you see the PM role evolving, Tovit?
Okay, before I want to tap onto Ziv's Abrams comment about creativity, saying that AI actually is great at creativity. And I'm thinking how we can play, if the AI is in the room and we have them, maybe use that as a catalyst of ideas and maybe ping pong with it. Think of Edward de Bono with all the hats. So the AI give me a green hat, a yellow hat, a black hat, and then we can discuss different ideas and different point of views. Maybe they can be the personas. So give me a persona which is a downer or a uplifter. Well, that's black and white and all the colors of de Bono. And so it is handling creativity, but I think the product manager, the PM's job would be to be that renaissance, or what Dan, I don't know how you would, maybe Don Draper, that person with that really, really fine taste in stuff, in art, that can see creativity. So you have lots of ideas running around because not everyone is so creative. That's why you have the machine, like Zev said. But you'll be the one who says, this is fine. This is the taste that we need here. This is what I know, coming with your signature renaissance.
Yeah, I like all of that. And I think like it's kind of a shame that we put some of our best, creatives, and I think creative across PMs are creatives, designers are creatives, engineers are creatives, like all of these are creative roles. We put a lot of people against doing boilerplate work because there hasn't traditionally been a better solution than that, right? You have your great designers who would be better curators of ideas, just moving pixels around in Figma. Nothing against that. It still has to happen, somewhere today, but like free the person up from that and let them be more of a curator or an ideator. Like that is the ideal, I think, role. And again, AI can do some of it, right? It's a great thought partner. You can bounce stuff off of it. Ideally, you wouldn't just totally give up the farm and let AI do everything, just because that's kind of like dystopian and bad, not because it can't. So,
but
like,
I think Dan, you're kind of touching on a key thing there, in that the person who maybe is the I think you said pixel pusher in Figma, they're the pixel pusher a lot of the time because they're the junior employee, because they're the person that just got brought in. You're trying to give them some foundation, learn where things are. What happens to that? It's hard to say that pixel pusher, that junior person, maybe brand new to the field or whichever field they're working in. Now I need you to do something that in general I would have my people with 5-10 years experience working on.
Look, I mean, maybe just to be overly reductive about the software industry, I think we've kind of had an easier time of having kind of apprenticeship paths than most other fields have, right? So, we can all make fun of bankers and the idea that like you go there and you work 120 hours a week and then only a handful of people ever make it through to be senior bankers. But at least you knew what that path was, right? Like you kind of knew if you wanted to be a banker, that's what you do. And for a long time, that was the same with software. You go and be a junior coder, you learn the ropes, you figure out how to build architectures, you figure out how to talk to stakeholders and customers. Like it was obvious how you built those skills. And I do think a lot of this stuff is taking away apprenticeship paths. And we don't have a good answer for that.
Well, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
I do think on that point, early career people are the ones that are going to need the most upskilling. And because those are the, going back to the earlier point, that is the work that is the most execution oriented and the first that's getting automated. So, whether it's working on soft skills, critical thinking, learning to ask the right questions rather than just checking the boxes on things, I think that kind of thinking will be really important. So.
Great.
Well, that being said,
go
though,
Go
for it, Toby. I will go last.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I agree with what Zane said, but now my thought line is cut completely. Oh my God. What was it about apprentice?
We'll just all stare at you. That'll help.
And the chat.
Here, let's go to Isabella, and then if it comes back to you, we come back to you. Isabella?
What I wanted to say is that aside from the creative, pure product development, technical sort of skill set that a product manager needs or encompasses, at the end of the day, product management is multidisciplinary, right? You have the bucket of the technical skill set, then you have the bucket of the soft skills, and more specifically the ones related to communication. And effectively, what we would like are more junior people, or the skills that we would like are more junior people to hone on. That would be storytelling, that would be communicating clearly, defining direction. I mean, this is a skill that you don't end up at some point suddenly 10 years later down the line with a level of proficiency. You build on top of that and on the previous experience. So it is the opportunity for them to actually focus on this bucket. And then the third bucket would be related to relations, building relationships, influencing, whether it is a matter of influencing peers or more senior stakeholders, and actually helping the organization driving forward or dealing with conflicts. Those are actually quite key skills for a PM. And in reality, I have not seen in any product management interview, just looking at the technical skills and the product sense, the other two are equally important. And the ones who actually grow in seniority are the ones who are stronger in the latter two.
Those are great. Those are really great. Thanks for pointing those out. Tova, do you want me to go back to you?
Yeah. So Isabella, I almost want to echo that. So I'll be very short, but Zane, I remember what I wanted to say, which is it's the EQ that is needed, the soft skills, like we all kept saying. And I think that when a junior PM is joining with zero experience, he can come with a lot of experience in the EQ section. So any soft skills that they're bringing, I don't know what was the previous job, even in high school or college, whatever. It's not the years of being a PM. It's years of listening and asking smart questions, difficult questions, and just pausing and taking that all in. So you could have 30 years of career and launching great products, but how great are they if you don't have that experience? So if you have the experience of listening, I don't know, I come from journalism, it's not PM, but still understanding, asking the right questions, getting that gold out of people can really help understand what they want, because this is what product managers do. They create stuff that people should use. So that's it.
Those are great. The focusing on the soft skills, developing those soft skills for the betterment of the organization, the company, to further the strategy. That's really great. both of those. So that brings us. So we're going to wrap up topic 1 right now, and we're going to move on to our trivia segment of the show. I would just add, if you know the answer in the chat room, if you know the answer in the on-camera part of our roundtable, don't say it. We'll get to that later in the show. But with that said, let's do some TPG live trivia. What deliciously famous principle did Jeff Bezos establish at Amazon to keep teams small and efficient? Once again, what deliciously famous principle did Jeff Bezos establish at Amazon to keep teams small and efficient? All right, so I'll let everyone ponder the answer. Don't say it. Feel free to say non-answers. I don't know what that would be, but so we'll get to the answer later. So and we'll see who's got the answer for this. The next piece, and this is what I was saying. We're going to get into this. I want to talk about the evolving skills and frameworks for product managers, rethinking what PMs need for 2025 again and beyond. So, what skill do you think will be most important for PMs in 2025? Zane, let's go to you.
I think we touched on it a bit earlier, so it's interesting. I think that like adaptability, and because of how quickly things are changing, it's not even like, I think there's too much focus on just learning, let me learn this one specific thing or this one specific tool, whereas learning how to learn and learning how to adapt really fast, whatever the latest tool is going to probably set you up best for success. So I think adaptability is one key one. I know there's others out there too.
Dan?
No, that's a great one. And actually just on that, I have personally kind of had to get better at, creating myself a backlog of things to try. Like I am, and like I said, I've been going on about these tools that I use a lot. I actually need to branch out and sort of use other ones. They're not the only ones out there. So I try to keep a list of things, and like every couple of weeks, I'll check myself, like how many of these new things did I try? It's actually really important. I think the main other one that I would call out is, this is going to sound weird because again, I think maybe it doesn't apply everywhere throughout the stack, but maybe it does. I think a bias for action. Right. I think PMs are, historically very thoughtful people who don't want to make rash decisions. I think that's actually something we have to sharpen our sort of, pencils on and get better at. There are times now to just do something instead of thinking about it. And, especially if you have the tools. Now, you don't want to make it, it's like the one-way versus two-way door. That is not a trivial, that's an Amazon thing, but it's not a trivia answer. The one-way versus two-way door question, if I can undo what I just did, I should probably just try it if it's cheap enough and quick enough and I'll learn something, versus the things you do that you can't walk back, right? Which should be much more considered and careful.
Isabella, what skills do you see for PMs? What skills will be most critical for PMs if I'm looking 3 years out, 5 years out? What do you see as the most critical? And also I'd be curious if you think they vary, but whether you're entry level, mid level leadership in an organization.
So I will double down on what I said earlier on. No matter what the level, strategic and critical thinking will be key regardless. And then from the moment that we're talking about, the product function, product sense, no matter what level you are, unless you have a good product sense, then, you can't really differentiate in this field, right? Now, this is what I would like to mention. Critical and strategic thinking, product sense, and stakeholder engagement, okay? Just to follow the rule of 3.
So I can hear people off cameras asking the question, okay, strategic and critical thinking, got it. Got to build those skills. How? What am I supposed to be doing to be better at strategy?
Can I?
Yeah.
Study. You can study, guys. Strategy is a discipline. You can study it. There are several books around strategy, business strategy, customer strategy, product strategy. At the end of the day, you need to understand what it entails, and equally then you can actually run a number of exercises. I really love the approach that the management consultants take. They're doing a lot of cases. That's another way to start building both product sense and strategic and critical thinking.
Tove, what skills do you see becoming less important as the field evolves?
Wow. I was planning for the other one because I wanted to add.
Take the other one and then take this one. Take them all.
Okay. I want to say again how much communication skills, empathy, active listening is so crucial, especially because we keep saying that automation is going in and taking over. So who's left? We need to communicate with that. What's less? Oh, wow. I think a lot of the technical things, because anyways we can automate them, so we can come up with shortcuts, and then our time is just freed, hopefully, that's my naive hope, to go out of the office or the home office and meet the people and speak with them. So either to sharpen ourselves for communication skills or to understand better the audiences.
Dan, same question to you. What skills do you see becoming less important as the field evolves?
I think the single biggest change is going to be cycle times. It's going to be how long it takes to do any sort of unit of work. And so I think there are PMs, and I'm not judging. It's just in some companies this is the job. There are some PMs who are basically just managing the sprint cycles. And they are keeping the cadence such that nobody freaks out, and they're trying to make sure that developers feel supported. And that's important, but I think that is going to change so much that anybody who's built their career on being a really, really good Scrum Master is going to just find that skill to be not relevant, right? They're going to have to find a new way to use that same basic thing, which is figure out a rhythm, keep people comfortable with it, but it's not going to be remotely the same kind of rhythm.
Gotcha. Zane, how do you, going up another level, how do you see leadership and decision-making changing for seasoned PMs in the coming years?
I think one thing that will still be relevant is, for at least the seasoned leaders, is the domain expertise and leaning into the areas where you really have knowledge that's not just, because AI today is much more of a generalist, right? And I think somebody said in the chat, like, it's trained on public data, et cetera. But if you have domain expertise, if you have experience over a series of failures and successes in a particular domain, I think that will still be valuable. So that's one area. Going back to your question, was it around managing, or was it more just what's useful for a senior leader?
How will leadership, decision making change for seasoned PMs in the coming years?
Yeah, a decision making, I think leadership will still be pretty important. So if you're a seasoned leader already and you have those skills, I think that piece is still going to be important. Because,
I guess, but what changes? What changes about my day to day? What changes about how I approach product management in general, product development, managing my teams, my organization?
I think it's managing the team through all of the changes that we just talked about, right? Because I think what we're saying is, the junior level role as it exists today is now becoming much more automated. And so it's no longer that you just have this junior team of PMs that are doing that work, the day-to-day execution work. You might now have a team which needs to be a bit more seasoned and up a level. And then it's a bunch of AI and agents and automation that is doing the basic work. So it could be a hybrid team that you're managing of AI as well as PMs that can no longer do the junior level work. So you need to help them up level so that they can manage the work at a higher level. So I guess it's kind of one thing I could think of.
Tove, same question to you.
I think With time, it would be interesting first for them to be more of an educators for all lines of seniority, and also maybe enable people to go around different roles each time you play one day or once a week or once a month doing wearing that marketing hat or that business to put people outside their comfort zone and get them to bring in different perspectives from different divisions of the same organizations. So how would a product manager feel if tomorrow he's in the sales? What will he bring back? So kind of cross pollinate and play with that within the same company.
So I think kind of, again, with you, Tobit, like kind of developing that and a little bit further, how can organizations, how should organizations be restructuring roles to create more room for growth and innovation for their product teams, their product managers, all levels?
So I think that would be a good way to go about it and give their juniors or mid-level people, managers, try other things just for their own professional development, but also for the company's benefit of bringing new insights, new roles, new way of doing things. It's the same company, but you don't know because sometimes it's different silos, and we have our own, positioning, and this is what we do, and we're the best, and we need it first, and we're the most important. But going through these different seats and different tables, bringing back that empathy because we understand what they're doing and why do they think this is most pressing, and why do they think they need to get answers first or budget first or the biggest budgets. Letting people kind of play around, change roles, change hats, change seats, and then come back with new, fresh perspectives.
Yeah. So cross-pollination is something that I think a lot of places do, but I think Isabella, what do you see as needed in changing like the expectations of the role of product manager and like the description of product manager, or the structure of the product organization?
Sorry, I was actually too focused on the previous question, and I would like to actually just leave a concept to answer the previous question, and then I can touch on your question. Is that
Sure.
okay with you?
Yeah.
So basically, when we're looking about what is changing in the way that the product leaders are called to make decisions and what is changing in this area, I would like to share a concept that it is quite old, to be honest. It comes from the early 2000s, and that is the T-shaped expertise. This type of concept typically is resurfacing in times of crisis and distribution. And what it says is that a leader and a business, in order to succeed, it will depend on the ability of the leader to own both the breadth and the depth of personal, functional, and industry skills. Actually, McKinsey wrote a relevant article, and I'm very happy to share the link. I think that if I were, let's say, to create my personal development plan, I would actually look into this framework and see where I sit against that and what I need to work on. So that's the one bit. Then, sorry, can we go ahead to your actual question?
Sure. So
what was it? If you don't mind repeating
it's an
it
evolution. It's an evolution of what you're just talking about there. And that what specific, when I'm thinking about the job description, the job description you might find on LinkedIn or elsewhere, what needs to change in that role definition, in the expectations of the role, in the requirements of the role? What needs to change maybe at a structural level for the product organization?
perhaps I'm not the best person to answer this question, and I will explain why. So I've worked within post-product market fit scale-ups, and I've worked as well in companies, Fortune 500 companies. It is quite interesting that each company has its own principles on how to format a job description. In all honesty, within Sky, if you had a look at the job descriptions, they're so vague, and they're actually around the key principles or the key values of the organization, and key tasks or key, let's say, responsibilities of the role. So I would assume in all cases and in all circumstances, we would expect that the product leader or the head of product would have to deliver a product, would have to design and own the vision and the strategy of their respective scope of work. And they would be responsible for, the post-launch management and optimization. Just to touch on this. So I personally, and perhaps I'm just biased by my experience, I don't see this job description changing unless we are talking about the menial level of, I want you to have UX, UI design experience, or I want you to be able to run A/B tests and so on. That would depend on the type of role and the type of product that you actually develop. That's my view, at least.
Anyone else have 2 cents that they want to put into that question?
I think the thing that, at least the thing that I think is going on right now with most companies as they try to hire product, is that they either describe the role that actually fits in their organization and they just label it product, right? You have to read between the lines and figure out what they're asking for, or it's a catch-all glue role that sort of blends too many different functions, and fundamentally it sets people up to not be very well supported, right? And I'm also assuming here that, like, most companies are bad at this. There are companies that are good at it. Those companies do have probably a better sense of where product sits inside their teams, and the job descriptions are probably pretty accurate, right? Like, this is what we expect you to do, and here's what everybody else does. But the thing that I think this might open up is kind of a split where you say, look, we do want people to focus on the business side of this, and we want other people to be really, really good builders and coordinators of building things. And maybe you won't try to conflate the two quite as hard as you have in the past, because it was a really important bridge to build between two sides of the business that really didn't understand each other. I could be wrong also, and it might be that that's literally where the role localizes, is that because this is about stapling business culture to creative, product culture, you just need somebody who's sitting literally at that exact spot, and this is what they do forever. I don't know, but I think that we've tended to conflate it, and it's usually that, I think to Isabella's point too, a lot of times these things just don't say much. So you have to read between the lines on what they're asking you to do, like what they need. And that's not usually easy to figure out.
Zane, as we look at traditional frameworks, how do you, as we're looking at them towards into the future, what do you see needing to change of these the frameworks? What needing to evolve? What needs to be replaced? The one I'm thinking off the top of my head is, like, we're talking about capital A Agile. What of that framework in your opinion, do you think needs to change over the next few years, or be replaced, or thrown out, or taken out back, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of the frameworks and methodology we've been using in product probably need a rethink because of all of the changes.
So be specific.
Yeah. So I'll take a step back, right? So I think the waves, like the first wave of product, like quote unquote product methodology, was like waterfall process, right? Like, okay, there's a cycle that takes 6 or 9 months before you have customer feedback loop. So your average loop between idea to requirements to getting feedback was maybe like 9 or 12 months. Then it comes to like lean and agile, and now we're at a point where it's 2-week sprints, or 4-week release cycles or 2-week release cycles. So your average loop is about 2 to 4 weeks. Now we're heading to a model, as I think someone mentioned earlier, where potentially your release cycles, and new features could be deployed almost instantly. So I think, when you think about things like Scrum ceremonies, as was mentioned earlier, all of the different things that happen around trying to release, if you can go from idea to live thing very, very quickly, then you don't necessarily need all of that stuff anymore. So I think so I don't know what the new methodology is necessarily, but I think all of the frameworks and methodology that we have today that are specifically focused around trying to get us from idea to a live piece of software, which I think a lot of Agile focuses on, I think we need to rip out and really more focus on, okay, now if we're heading into a world where it's instant kind of development cycles, what do we focus on? So the emphasis should be maybe more on hey, let's just make sure we're entering the right set of things to build, and then focusing on understanding the customer enough so that we're not wasting essentially cycles or churning out the right stuff.
So does that mean we need to throw out sprints, user stories, retros?
Maybe. I mean, I think each of those has a different purpose, right? But to me, the goal of product is to build things that people want and that love, and everything we do in between that is the steps that it takes today along the way to get us from that idea of something that people might like to seeing it in the hands of the actual customers. Now, if that cycle has collapsed a lot, do we still need to spend as much time as we do today on all of this stuff? Personally, I don't feel like we do. I think we do need to rethink that. What does the new model look like? Are we churning out features every day or every hour? Maybe that's not the right thing either, but I think there needs to be there's too much time being spent basically on paper pushing or whatever the word was used before. And
so I hear you proposing a 2-hour sprint.
I mean, why can't you have an instant sprint or whatever, right? Theoretically, that could be possible for some things. So
I see Dan in pain, so I want to go to him.
No, not in pain at all. This is exactly the thing that I think is going to happen is that and I've never worked on or run a growth team, but I've worked closely with them. And if you look at what growth teams typically do, they will still, and not just specifically them, but there are a lot of different teams who will work in sprints outside of the product and development world, right? They'll be like, oh, we're going to do a sprint on messaging for clickable ads. We're going to see which ones click the best, and we'll get back together and have daily stand-ups and look at their performance. That's totally the way that those teams work. And the only reason that we don't treat them the same way as capital A Agile teams is because of this idea that code is mysterious and you can't just bang it out, and it's not just words. It has to work together perfectly, and if you do it wrong, everybody dies. We have all of this idea, and again, a lot of it's true, but we have this idea around the myth of writing software that this is going to demystify. I think you're going to end up with the kind of daily sprints that you can do if you're a growth team. I put out some ads, I see what the data is the next morning. I put out a new feature, I see what it looks like the next morning. I make rapid choices, I roll it back, I do something else, I evolve it. I'm not saying this is going to be totally comfortable for all of us to work in. I do think there's a cadence that is way too fast that could sort of easily be reached, by doing this, sort of haphazardly. But I do think that's kind of more what the model is going to be. It's going to have to just be faster sprints with a little bit less kind of overhead.
Tove, what should happen how should Agile principles evolve to better meet today's product team needs?
Can you come again?
So, the Agile principles we have today, what evolution is needed to better serve today's product teams?
I don't say that all teams are working not at their best, but the communication has to improve in most companies and most teams. We do it fast, but then things are thrown and maybe we miss stuff, and maybe people have valuable insights of things that happened or things that they saw. And if we miss on listening to them and picking up on that, it's a big loss. And I think that's where we can, I dare to say, slow down a bit, even if the cycle is 24 hours, twice a day, whatever. We have to allocate some time to leverage the insights of the team as well as the feedback from the market and the users. So kind of slow down and communicate that.
Okay. We have a question that's came in from the audience. I'll do this as a toss-up to everyone. Do you see any particular specializations within the product management discipline evolving over the next? I'll add evolving over the next several years. Dan?
I do think there will be builders, like people who are basically, ideator builders who are not, for at least the particular role they play in the process, not dependent on other functions to do what they're doing. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but like, again, I'm sort of playing a version of that role now where I would like a pair on a whole bunch of things. It would be great to have somebody who can talk through architecture and design. It would be great to have somebody who's a little better at coding than I am, but I can do all the pieces to get to something that works. So I think you will have, especially in smaller companies where like the overhead's just going to be a lot less and where you'll feel like you can move faster, even if it has some penalties. I think you'll have people who are like, the product design and engineering role in one with, sort of external supervision.
Okay. So kind of a self-contained product, a full stack product manager, I guess you might.
I definitely been calling either full stack product people or, like there's this idea of AI engineers that's been, sort of rocketing around for the last year and a half. And I mean, what it basically says is like, you're not a person who builds models and you're not a full stack developer, but just enough about each of those things to staple it all together and build, essentially real applications. I do think that product people are well situated to do some of that if they are technical enough to hang with kind of the DevOps part of it. And again, I don't mean to like say, I don't know how many people this covers. It does cover me as a former engineer. I can do that. And there's a lot of product managers who are former engineers. So like, I would think there's a fair number of people out there who will just gravitate to that kind of role.
And I would agree with that. I think, the question was, are there specializations? But I think being multidisciplinary will actually, especially if you're an earlier career person, like if you can put across product design and engineering and be that solo builder or full stack, I think that will be super valuable rather than being niche and siloed to just one discipline.
Totally agree. And so maybe it is also just that there's going to be these like multidisciplinary people, low in the stack and multidisciplinary people high in the stack. And those are the specializations. Either you're really good at all the facets of the build or you're really good at all facets of the sort of business communication side.
Yeah, I would, definitely add that.
If I may add,
it's similar. We always start at the same time. So jack of all trades, but I would say that the communication under marketing, I would be interested to see someone who comes from marketing and knows storytelling very well to be in product, because these are the traits and skill sets that could definitely add a lot to the ability to read the room and to read our users.
Isabella?
Basically, just to add on top of what everybody else said, in all honesty, if we think the speed of, let's say, delivery and the number of products that will actually get to the market, then what I would expect is that we will have to have, a global product leadership kind of role. And what do I mean by that? I mean, the product leader nowadays, in the future, the product leader in the future would have to provide the overarching global product vision that will guide the entire product portfolio in alignment with the strategic objectives. And in all honesty, they would have to be able to provide a cohesive strategy to deliver multi-compatible.
Isn't that what I'm hopefully getting from the CPO today, though?
Well, yes and no. What you will notice in different organizations, you will have a CPO who will provide the overarching vision, but that would be that will not necessarily guide the different product lines, especially if the product lines are completely different products. So say that we're talking about, I wouldn't like to refer back to my industry. But say, for instance, someone who is a manufacturer and they manufacture, I don't know, computers and televisions and I don't know, other home devices. They come up with a very general global vision, but the problem is that typically on the way that the strategy is actually defined, it doesn't allow for compatibility across those devices. Perhaps there might be no reason for that from a business perspective, but does it really and truly guide the entire product strategy across a product portfolio? Some question marks there. And also the other thing that we are missing out at the moment is that effectively in the future, we would have to move forward to an end-to-end seamless customer experience across the different touch points. So now you're responsible for the on-product experience, but the problem is that, it might not be the same type of experience or the same level of quality experience provided across the different touch points. And I think that in the future, this is an opportunity for the global product leader to actually make sure that this is seamless, there is enough collaboration to influence all the different, let's say, cross-functional leaders to ensure that we offer an end-to-end cohesive experience.
Are you thinking of it more?
When I'm talking about global, it's not regional. It's global in terms of the compatibility with devices, compatibility with the product portfolio, compatibility with the end-to-end services, aside from the different market segments, the different regions, and for instance, as well, the compatibility with different back-end platforms.
Are you thinking of this as more product strategic? Or is it more operational consistency, making like product operations type of role?
No, for me, this is strategy. I mean, you can make sure that operationally things align. The question is towards what end. So unless there is strategy behind that drives the business and delivers the value add to the customer, then at least in me, sorry, I have very strong views on this one, sorry. But that's my view.
Gotcha. Dan, you mentioned you were talking about the full stack PM. Do we see the full stack PM as a permanent shift? Is it a temporary fix? Like, how does this come into play, especially when you think about product role, the fragmentation of product roles that comes up so much between PO versus PM? Are we looking at fragmentation? Are we looking at consolidation? Are we looking at both? And if we're looking at both, I have no idea what that means.
Well, look, I think I would hope that most of us would agree that the product role is poorly defined in practice. Like, there are books that talk about it, and I have a strong feeling on what I think that it should be. Like, I guess at the root, like, I buy the Marty Kagan formulation of value and viability, right? You are there to decide what is valuable to the business and whether it can be done, right? And or whether it's viable if you do it, right? Are you going to kill the business if you do it? And so the idea that, there is still a person in the business who needs to do that, 110%. There needs to be someone playing those roles. Will that person be called a product manager, and will it have anything to do with the way that we think about those roles today? I don't know. But like the thing that sort of sticks out in terms of like full stack PMs, and like, I know there's a question in the chat, which I totally appreciate about, does it make sense for PMs to go and be engineers? In some cases, absolutely not, right? Is it a good idea for a PM to wade into the intricacies of horrible legacy stacks where you have, highly trained engineers who keep them alive and understand them at a really deep level? No, probably not. But does it make sense for a startup to have a single person who's able to take idea all the way to implementation? Yes, probably it does, right? I think you'd still call both those people product managers, but they're not doing the same job. That's always been the problem, right? It's very hard to localize. So like, I would see it as you just need to be more honest about what exactly, you want from these people, And AI in particular allows you to get more out of individuals. And if you need to decrease cycle time, or if you think that the overhead of communicating between people is negative, you can avoid it. Doesn't mean it always is negative. There are times when it's very positive.
Tovit, to you for the next question. We've been looking at the remote work. Remote work, we were at 100%. Remote work's been shrinking. It's probably not going to be going away. And so now we have these hybrid work environments. How do PMs need to adapt their leadership styles for these types of distributed teams?
First of all, to acknowledge that it's a very different landscape. It's not Kansas anymore. You only see a snippet of that person. You can read the whole body language because there isn't, and sometimes the camera is off. So because communication is so critical within the team, plus with other teams, they have to come up with, maybe AI can help, but with innovative ideas to take some time, allocate to communicate and understand and read what's going on, what's the undercurrent. I'm not sure I fully answered, but there's something interesting in a comment that I want to address. So someone said, I think Zev, about hardware, Zev Abrams, about hardware, PMs in hardware. So I think all of you are in software. I used to work in a hardware tech company. I had the marketing and biz dev VP hat on, but I do acknowledge that it takes such a long time to launch and build. We build a machine, so it takes years until it's out there. What does the PM do? How is that role different? I'll be happy to bounce this ball around with you guys. I feel that because it took so long, the PM in that company needed to put on other hats on his head and act as maybe a marketer or maybe customer success and meet the market without having anything tangible, because it's coming only in 3 years. So he developed that, but he had to be in constant communication and contact with their potential users. It's very different from these products that Dan mentioned that they are launched every hour on the hour. What do you?
And just real quick, I also worked in hardware a little bit, and it's absolutely true that like the cycles are longer, right? So the question is AI eventually going to bring the cycle time for hardware down? Maybe, but certainly not at the speed that it is with software, right? And so the question of like, it's more expensive, you have to raise more capital, it's a lot harder to get, hardware startups going. It's possible though. I mean, like I have friends who've done hardware on a shoestring, but yeah, I'm definitely much more software focused. I think that's where the big opportunity is right now.
Do we see hybrid work, the distributed teams? Or is it hurt? Where do we land here? Is it hurting productivity? Is it weakening team culture?
May I share my experience? So I have been working with globally distributed teams from day one in my career. And I noticed that there are indeed some specific challenges that relate to the work culture and the quality of standards differences, the communication and collaboration style might differ. And equally, it's quite difficult to build trust and a strong relationship with someone who's across the ocean. That being said, I have done the best and the most in my career with those teams. And what helped me, at least in my case, was setting clear expectations on outcome-focused targets, having specific expectations around and agreed expectations around the quality of standards and the time frames and the level of participation. The other thing is, when you're talking about distributed teams, most probably not all of them would be native English speakers. Therefore, the communication has to be simpler and in many respects written and not broadcasting. So that's the other thing that I found quite useful. And finally, I mean, you can build strong relationships with someone that you are sharing experiences. So by all means, considering this partnership as a relationship instead of, let's say, an agency type of working, let's say, arrangement, then you can share feelings and you can share, thoughts on the back of an important presentation, and possibly you can manage actually to meet once in a while in person. I have fantastic relationships and some good friendships that I've formed over the years throughout my career. So yeah, that's my view, and that was my experience.
Jeremy, can I add another thing on that?
Yeah.
Great. So I would try and allocate one-on-one time, like a date night with your partner, but not romantically. Find time to speak about non-work. Yeah, that's a strange example. But once a month or once every 2 weeks, find 20 minutes of whatever, but nothing to do with work, to kind of replace that non-personal aspect. And I would also consider sending something physical, something small, tangible. Let's say we met and you told me about that guitar collections that you have, so I'll send this miniature physical snail mail to kind of change the discussion of everything is robotic and in the ether, but just physical. And I can say, maybe this company Daily Dev, a friend of mine started that, and since day one, it's a software company. Since day one, they've been distributed in the Philippines, Middle East, Europe, and they have only offsites. Every 3 months, they get everyone together. It's much cheaper than just having all the offices. Everyone works from their home, even if they're in the same country. But just having that face-to-face every now and then is just worth it. This is how you build real relationship, if it's possible. Might be even economical.
Zane, one of the downsides of working in a hybrid, remote, distributed team is that there's a lot of talk about how the junior people, junior PMs, are getting left behind. They don't have the support they need. What strategies do you recommend to provide that type of support to develop junior PMs in these hybrid remote setups?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can be more of a challenge when it's hybrid remote. So I still, so just on a personal note, there was a couple of years ago, I was working with teams across 5 time zones. So I was in New York, and there's a team in Singapore, then India, Berlin, and then New York and California. And it was definitely much more challenging, right? Versus everyone being co-located and working at the same time. But there was a couple of lessons learned for me from that might be helpful for others too. One was the plus side was I realized that I can't necessarily do everything myself, and that I physically could not do everything myself. So there was more empowerment that I could give to the team. So that was one thing, is if you can set clearer objectives for people and focus more on the outcomes, and then individuals can actually have more responsibility, which can help them grow faster. But then there's a second piece to that. If they have more responsibility, they also need more support and guidance, right? And if you're not there every single day, all the time, how do you provide the support and guidance they need? And the things that I've seen that people have done that have been effective is there's a lot more tools at our disposal. So whether it's recording Loom videos, voice notes, asynchronous messages, there's a lot of communication you can do asynchronously now using all different methods, whether it's video or voice, that can help people feel like you're there with them, even though you're not there. And then the third thing I did was, for the moments where there's really critical collaboration that needs to happen, where we're trying to set the direction, or we're trying to move in a new direction, those are the moments where I really tried to emphasize being there in person, as opposed to trying to make it all work remotely. And then once the direction was set for the next quarter or 8 weeks or whatever have you, then it became easier to manage some of the async communication. So those are some of the strategies I use, but there's no there's no perfect answer here.
Yeah, as a follow-up, and I'll just put this out to anyone who wants to tackle this one. A lot of the big companies are saying, hey, if you work remotely, don't expect to be promoted, don't expect to progress. What should companies be doing to ensure fairness and equal opportunities, whether people are remote or in office?
I could do 2 hours on this one topic,
Happy to
but
take.
I don't want that. Sorry, Isabella, you want to go first?
Dan, you take it, and then we'll go to Isabella.
Sorry, I felt that I interrupted you. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair enough. I'll jump in. I know there's a little bit of a delay. So I was this guy for a long time. So Jeremy, when I met you at Viacom, I was out in New Jersey, about 2 hours away. I was the guy who was not in the office every single day, right? And it held me back 100%. At every job that I had, not being able to be in the office.
You were on a different floor, so you were remote to me anyway.
I know, exactly. So, and that's even more the point. The fact that we always prioritize office attendance so much is, just a cultural artifact, which, COVID, I think, has largely changed. It hasn't broken it, but it certainly changed it. And, I've run teams that were global. Most of my team was in Ireland for, one job. And, another time it was in Belarus. Like, you have to build those relationships wherever you are. And I did go to Ireland and Belarus. Like you need to be there. So the idea of physical presence being important and, at the same time, remote being largely destigmatized now, which again, not for every company, there's a snapback happening. And some of it is cynically, I think, to protect some real estate investments and local political issues that they all have. But I think the point is you need to be there for your team. Physical is great. But the best example I have is I had a team who was largely based in New York, but I was far enough out that I didn't want to come in every day. I was in once a week, and I was pretty open about the fact I'm basically here to buy you guys lunch. I want to be with you physically so that I can see you and we can hang out, and we're all doing our work, and it doesn't really matter where we are to do that work, right? And I think to Zane's point, there are times when you do want to bring people together for big, sort of intellectual exercises where the latency is lower. So think about it as purely the office usually isn't the thing that gets the work done. It's the relationships and facilitating very specific situations that you need.
Yeah. Now to you, Isabella.
I mean that we will all agree that FaceTime is important, right? That being said, when we're looking into the hybrid or remote kind of ways of working, one of the groups that suffers significantly, at least if I can share, the experience in the UK, that would be the working parents. So in all honesty, this is a whole conversation that is happening specifically within women employee networks and so on. But what I would just say today is three things. First of all, if you want to ensure that, the person delivers, you can have regular and outcome-focused progress and performance reviews. We all value outcome more than, the perception or any other echo chamber bias. So therefore, that's a clear way to ensure that, the employee is delivering and is able to showcase growth. The second point would be around making sure that the meetings are inclusive. You don't have to change your tech, you don't have to change anything, but just prioritize or make space for the remote participants to actually participate and contribute to the conversation. And the thirdly is just make sure that you are quite transparent with your communication and how you share direction of travel. So communicate openly, transparently with all the team members via one or two maximum, let's say, means of communication, whether that is Teams, chats, or emails, whatever it is, but everybody gets the same information as everyone else. So there is no, let's say, inconsistency there. With those three changes, I don't see any reason why, one group would be more favored than the other.
Zane, I want to go to you for this one. As we look towards the future, I kind of wanted to say in the year 3000, just to get everyone looking future-y enough. As we look towards the future in product, the function of product management, how do you see it evolving? Is it something that you see basically getting dissolving and getting absorbed into other departments? Do you see it a different way?
I think we've touched on it throughout the conversation. What I think will be really important in the future is product thinking. So product thinking, I think, will be really important. Product management, if you define the management piece as more of like the execution and kind of moving things around, moving the process along, those things I think will become less important. But what I do think, as we talked about earlier, is as there's more ideas, it becomes easier to building the right thing and getting customers and being able to retain customers and all of those pieces will become more important. So I think there's aspects of product that will be very relevant moving forward. Whether or not it's still exactly the same function as it is today, I think it'll probably change. One actually interesting example that I was looking at earlier was if you look at Linear, you guys may know the company Linear. What they did was they have a head of, they didn't hire a product person for quite a while. So they had a head of product and then, basically who's kind of setting the strategic direction and essentially deciding like what is the right thing to build. And then a lot of the like day-to-day Scrum and execution responsibilities were just dispersed amongst the engineering team. And I think that kind of model is something we'll see more of as we look ahead.
Yeah, Tovit, same to you.
If given that by the year 3000, machines are everywhere, I think maybe product would be the only.
Or it's like Dune, where we've overthrown the machines and it's back to basics.
That would be nice. So we'll need survival skills, right? Because we're in the jungle and savannah. But I think that if we look ahead and everything is so automated and tech is just, a no-brainer, product might be the only or the most important thing. Starting with ideation and seeing that this is a product that people and users would actually use, speaking with them, building up the personas, but then building that product and shipping that would be a no-brainer. So I think product people might be elevated as a profession.
Who else wants to tackle that one?
I hope that is the way that it goes. And I do think there's a decent chance that over time, especially because product people, I think, are naturally pretty adaptable. Like, I think that's one of the things you have to be. It's usually not your first job. So you usually are coming into it with some other perspective. I think it makes sense that product people would ultimately be the glue for, a business-oriented founder who just doesn't want to deal with technology or doesn't want to deal with customers, has, sort of other jobs that they're more focused on. Like one thing actually that we haven't brought up yet, but that I think is real, in the future is that companies are not going to be as large as they are now. I think you're going to see a lot of, we gave you the example of growth teams, right? And, nothing against individual folks on the growth team, but if your job is basically coming up with new ad campaigns and measuring them, that is a very automatable job, right? Writing code is a very automatable job in a lot of ways. There are going to be smaller teams doing these things. And so I think you're not going to see I think there's still going to be utility for people who are good at running very large product orgs, but I think it's more going to be in the context of a relatively small team. Are you the person who's on top of all of these details enough to sort of glue it all together? That's the way I see a lot of the role working today anyway. So, I think like people who are good at that will still have a lot of value. I think it's just going to be in these contexts that feel much smaller than maybe we're used to.
That's a good point.
I think sorry, Jeremy, I was going to add one thing. I think
go for it.
Building on that point too, I think we'll see more solo, small teams, but also solo founders.
Absolutely.
When I've talked to product people, one of the things that people are frustrated about, especially if you're at a big company, is oftentimes you get into product because you're kind of a builder at heart and you want to be able to build, right? And then there's all of these other things that actually get in the way, and your job becomes all of this other stuff that you actually don't necessarily like in the first place. And so in a positive scenario, it could be a situation where we can actually get back to the the pieces of product that we like, which is creative, actually being able to build stuff, doing things that see the light of day, and not having to manage all of these complex stakeholder relationships that, make the job so complicated and stressful.
Yeah, I think when I've looked at as I've kind of studied this challenge as well, I've seen I think to the point that I've heard mentioned a few times now, the number of product managers might be decreasing, but I also think that product operations role or product operations / coach / teacher role growing in a lot of organizations and imbuing that product thinking, product mindset throughout the organization, so that everyone's kind of doing some level of product management or approaching everything with some level of a product mindset. You might have fewer product people maybe focusing on higher level vision, higher level strategy, but more I think also those product people or those product operations people are facilitating more people, and the best of the best skills are commingling in the optimal way to get all the right people involved in the process. So that's I think that's kind of what I see from my vantage point. But it's definitely yeah. I don't know the year 3000. I was just trying to get people to think a little bit further than next year. Anyone else have other comments on this before we shift gears? No. All right.
The only thing that I wanted to say, I have. Sorry, is there a lag there?
You're good. Go.
What I wanted to say is that effectively, if we were to remove for simplicity all the best factors, at the end of the day, what is business? It is an organization that produces a product to serve its customers in order to generate revenue. Now, from the moment that the company will still exist, the customer would be willing to purchase, then somebody would have to be responsible and would own effectively what the final outcome and the output of the company is, and that is called product or service. And the only function at the moment that sits at the intersection of that wider business, customer, and technology Venn diagram at the moment is the product. If, I don't know, customer support or tech or somebody else is going to take on this role or this hat, fair enough. But at the end of the day, it's just another permutation of the product function. That's the reason why I believe that, the product management function is not going to, disappear.
Great. Well, it's good to know it's not going to disappear anytime soon, or at least before maybe 1,000 years or so. So I'm going to put a pin in this topic. We're going to move on to the final part, the second half of our trivia segment. So just as a quick reminder for our question.
What deliciously famous principle did Jeff Bezos establish at Amazon to keep teams small and efficient? Once again, what deliciously famous principle did Jeff Bezos establish at Amazon to keep teams small and efficient?
All right. So I'm looking in the chat room. I'm going to look around the room here. Who thinks they've got the answer to this one? Dan raised his hand. Back in school. Go for it, Dan.
Well, I believe it was called the 2 pizza rule.
All right. Anyone else have that answer? Looking up. I'll pretend I'm looking up, looking up, looking down. Yes, it is. It's the Bezos's goal was to improve team efficiency, avoid the pitfalls of oversized teams. He was seeking to keep teams around 5 or 10 people to encourage agility, better communication, faster decision making. A lot of things we've been talking about tonight. teams with a singular focus, they can't remain lean without the appropriate sustenance, and as Dan has already stated, that sustenance being the two pizza rule of thumb. I guess if you're going by that, no one can have more than 2 slices, or only a couple people might be able to have 2 slices and the rest not, or maybe order a salad too. I'm not sure. So it's the 2 pizza rule. I see Daniel got that. I see Daniel Zev Abrams also got that. So congrats to anyone who got our trivia question. I've gone for a long drought in my trivia questions with asking things that were a little bit too obscure. So I'm glad I'm calibrating a little bit better now. And so I want to go around the round table right now. Anyone have any final comments? I'll just I'll go in the order that I see people on my screen, and so I'll start with you, Isabel. Any final comments, and also let people tell people how they can reach you and find you online.
No comments. I think that we covered everything quite thoroughly, and thank you so much for putting together this agenda and thought-provoking agenda. If people want to find me, they can find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Tovit.
Yeah, so this was really fun. I'm not thinking about the year 3000, but maybe 2525.
I'll take it.
Yeah, with the sun. So thank you so much. That was really nice and fun. You can reach me out on LinkedIn and say hi there.
Dan.
Yeah, this was awesome. So thank you, Jeremy, for facilitating. I am mostly active on LinkedIn, but I'm trying to sort of do something on Twitter, which I generally hate, but it's where the action is on AI. So
Blue Sky.
But as soon as the AI Blue Sky gets good enough, maybe I'll be there. My wife would appreciate that. She's on Blue Sky. Anyway, but LinkedIn, Twitter, those are both good. And in general, I'm open for consulting engagements, things like product coaching. I'm doing a little bit of on the side, very interested in seeing what's out there.
Awesome. Zane.
Yep. Echo everyone's comments. Thanks so much, Jeremy, for hosting. This was great. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I think the 2 topics that we covered extensively today, future of product and future of skills, are 2 areas I'm super passionate about. So always love to chat with other product people or aspiring PMs about that. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, big area of my focus as well. I study that. I study the future quite a bit. And so I just want to big thanks to everyone else tuning in off camera. Your engagement, your questions, comments are really what makes TPG Live, this podcast that we do every month, as special as it is. Your participation is just a huge part of what creates our unique value. And I also just want to thank again our roundtable, Tovit, Zane, Isabella, Dan. You guys were awesome. Your answers were amazing. Just some key takeaways I have from our talk today is I think we're all going to have to focus a little bit more on creativity. The junior people focus more on the communication skills, those soft skills, and figure out how you can help develop those skills to benefit the larger company, and also get ready for decreasing cycle times, focusing on value and viability, and one-on-one non-work related time with your remote teams. I think that's a great idea. Maybe you just sit down and paint a mug together across the screen. So if you'd like to be part of the roundtable, please reach out. You can, if you'd like to join the roundtable, you can email me at jhorn@theproductguy.com. We'd love to have you join us on screen. Every person, background, experience is welcome. Also, we have a lot more topics to cover. We're always looking for new ideas. If you have suggestions, let us know in the comments below what you'd like us to discuss in future episodes. And so I also just have a favor to ask of everyone who's watching this show now or later. I've got a favor to ask. click like, subscribe, enable notifications, and tell 5 friends about the TPG Live podcast and the Product Way YouTube channel. These small actions really are a big help to what we're trying to do here. And also, just to remind everyone, we launched the Product Way Patreon. So thanks for tuning in, and I'd like to share how you can support this show and others like it on the Product Way channel while unlocking amazing benefits. For just $5 a month, you get every episode of the Product Way, How I PM, Mentor Talk series, Product Excellence, Products TPG Spotlight, and just much more, all ad-free. If you want a little extra, at $15 a month on our Patreon, I'll personally give you a shout-out in an upcoming episode, your name in the credits, even a video shout-out right here on the show. For $25 a month, you unlock priority access to events, exclusive access to decks, and toolkits to enhance your work. And for those ready to go all in, subscribe as a product leader and enjoy annual one-on-one mentorship sessions, personalized guidance, and a lot more. Your support helps us keep delivering insightful content, growing this amazing community with both virtual and in-person events that we've got all around the world, and making the Product Way even better. So please head to patreon.com/theproductway and subscribe at any level that works for you. Every contribution, big or small, makes a huge difference, and really thank you so much for your support. And again, thank you from me to both our on-camera and off-camera roundtables for your wisdom, for your awesome conversation, and see you all next time on TPG Live.